Hello and welcome to the Creative Lotus Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Zaki.
Don't get so caught up in what has come that you don't keep looking forward. Remember the sort of spirit you had in your youth.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Creative Lotus Podcast. On this week's episode, we have Phil Walker, and he is a writer for television. Welcome to the podcast, Phil Walker. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I was just telling everybody, isn't Alan's background like incredible? I was just like, wow. But I don't know. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here. It is a rainy day in LA, which used to be abnormal, but this year it is not. So I'm enjoying it. I should go out with like a bucket or something, right? And just keep the rain for the next 10 years when we don't have it.
Seriously. Well, actually, I think the city of Los Angeles could actually do that themselves because, we need this rain. And according to officials, no one's collecting it. So maybe we have to take it upon ourselves to do it. It's ridiculous. I can't. Yeah, I'm kind of over this rain too. It's nice, but like we're in March. Like, can we please get to spring, like the sunny part of it? I don't know. It gets kind of crazy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, May flowers. Where's that?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Bring them flowers, please. So Phil, just for everyone that's, listening and watching, I want to kind of get some background on you. So if you could share kind of maybe where you're born and raised, and then ultimately what brought you here to Los Angeles.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah. So I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. And I spent the first 11 years of my life there. Grew up there. I was in a suburb in Matteson, which is a suburb of Chicago. And it's funny. I always like to tell people I grew up next to a cornfield. That is true. But it was funny in that, like, basically, they still do it to this day, but especially back in the 90s, way back in the 90s when I was a kid, they were like doing lots of like new subdivisions and suburbs and all of that. So it's not like I was like out there. It's just they hadn't quite finished bulldozing all the corn yet. So but by the time I was like 10, they had like gotten rid of it and put houses on top of it. So you wouldn't say why was a house in the middle of a cornfield. You'd say why was a cornfield in the middle of a suburb. But spent the first like 11 years there, and then I actually lived in Atlanta. And I went to middle school and high school in Atlanta, in McDonough, Georgia, which is famous in that that's where Raphael Warnock said he wanted to be a werewolf. He used to be a vampire, but I was showing you, there's somebody I know who actually like has family in McDonough, and he's like, well, I've never met someone else who was that's like who was even knows what McDonough, Georgia is, and then that happens. Like, well, now McDonough, something else interesting happened in McDonough. I think Shaq was running to be sheriff there. It's like it's just so weird. Like it's very strange, and because it's Nowheresville, Georgia. Don't send any letters. I love McDonough, Georgia. No, but went to middle school and high school out there, and then went to college in South Carolina, in Columbia, South Carolina. Went to University of South Carolina. And majored in initially business, international business. But what I realized was I was more interested in the international than the business. So I switched to film production, which was called media arts, and that was kind of how I got my start. I actually started the moment. It's really one of those sort of like kismet, or like when Al and I talk, we talk about like sort of mystical moments. It was very, very mystical. It's just kind of the right things aligning at the right time, and me shockingly at 18 years old being able to like pay attention and notice, because I still have trouble paying attention and noticing to this day. But like, it shocks me that I was able to be observant for 1 second at least, and that was good. When I was 18, and I just needed I guess to go back a little bit too. I've always been a writer. I realize now. Because like when I was a kid, I was like drawing like comics, and they'd be little stick figures. I haven't progressed past stick figures to this day, but but I would always draw like comics of like my favorite shows, like G.I. Joe, and like they would be saying, This is like when I was 3. I'm writing it on like printer paper ostensibly, and I was 3, so I could only spell like 2 words, yes or no. And so there'd be little word bubbles, and the characters would either say yes or they would say no. Right? And when I was a kid, I was a little bit of a latchkey kid. Because both of my parents worked, and I'm an only child, so I would just be. This is pre-internet, so like it was either like watch television. I wasn't gonna do homework, but it was either like watch television or amuse yourself. I wasn't gonna read. Like, give me a break. Which is funny because I love reading now. Like, I actually love reading now, but I couldn't stand it. But that was kind of the vibe at the time. Alan, you were there. Like, you remember, like they'd have like the book fairs, and they'd be like, please read something, and we'd be like, nah. Like, oh, nah, I'm good, thank you. Exactly. So what I would do to amuse myself is I would just wander around the house and come up with new episode ideas for my favorite shows.
Wow.
And I would act them out and all of that. I was having a whole performance, just for me, just for Nora. We had some really great seasons there. We really like got to the heart of the issues in those one-man shows and one-audience shows. And so, but I didn't realize that at the time, like, honestly. And so going back to college, it was my second semester freshman year, and I needed one more class to fill out my schedule. And I looked through, I swear to you, every major. Clearly, I was searching for something. I looked at psychology. I looked at all of the sorts of things. I always remember psychology specifically because I was like, oh, that would be cool. And then I was like, never mind. And I found one in what was called media arts. It was MART. At first I was like, what is MART? And so I was like, and it was film production ostensibly. Because it was film and photography. Our media school wasn't big enough to just have like, you're out here, and I know people who went to like USC, and they're like, yeah, so I majored in like television, being key dolly grip for television, but they have like the money and they have the people and the interest. That was not the case where I went. And I looked at one of the classes, and it was like, oh, this class is really interesting. And then I looked at another class, and I was like, oh, all of these classes are really interesting. And so I found a class that I could do without the credits for it. And even then, I didn't realize I wanted to be a writer till I actually moved out to LA. But kind of how I got into the industry was at that time, South Carolina had film incentives. And so different movies and pilots and stuff like that and TV shows would come through, and you could work on them. And, they would get a break in the budget if they hired locals. And so my first job in the industry was in 2006, I think. Yeah, fall 2006, yeah, because I wasn't quite 21 yet. And it was on a Kevin Bacon movie, Death Sentence. Wow. And it was directed by, I forget what his name is, but he was the director of Saw. Wow. So very, yeah, and we shot, and yeah, I know. And we even shot in like this abandoned mental hospital that was in like the area, and they'd have like places like cordoned off with like plastic because there's like black mold. It's like, it was totally inappropriate.
Wow.
And you had to wear a mask. Like, right, oh, totally. Like, they gave us masks. Like, and again, this is 2006. Right. They're like, yeah, you don't walk around here without a mask on. You're gonna be breathing in some stuff you're not supposed to.
Gosh.
And I was insane, right? I was the props intern, and so like my job was to, like the director's chairs, and they'll have like the important people's names on them. My job was to pull out the chairs and put the important people's names on them. So, wow. Yeah, and so I did that, and then once I graduated college, I came out to LA, and I worked in various things in the industry and production companies and on shows and stuff like that. And I actually thought I wanted to be a development exec, because in my internship when I worked out here, I worked in development. And it was very exciting and very cool because I really liked like the concept of just making the story and doing the story and like bringing it together and all of that. But then I was also writing scripts and entering in contests and fellowships and stuff like that. And actually, much credit where credit is due. One of my really good friends, I actually spoke to him a few days ago. He lives in Texas now, but who I met in South Carolina. We were in media arts together. We were like best buds, and he was like, "I'm a writer. I'm a writer. I'm a writer. I'm a writer," and like he really did. We worked well together as writing partners, and like he kind of, because of him, I really wrote a lot more than I probably would have otherwise, and it really did kind of make me realize that I wanted to be a writer. But the funniest thing is this, like I thought I wanted to either be a development exec or a writer. And again, I was like 22. So I made the stupidest choice imaginable, which is like, I was like, well, whichever one happens for me first, that's the one I'll do, which is a terrible way to make a decision. But I did get a job as a writer's PA on Orange is the New Black, the first season. And so I pursued that, and that was actually, thank goodness, that was actually the right choice.
Yeah.
And I guess it goes from there. I was a writer's PA. I was a PA just in general, which PA means production assistant. And then I was a writer's PA, which is a production assistant who works just for the writers. Basically, your job as a writer's PA is just to get lunch for everybody. Like, that is your entire job. Right. Like, get the lunch order and then get the lunch. Then I became a writer's assistant. And then my big breakthrough was on a show called Legends of Chamberlain Heights. And I always tell this story. The showrunner on that, he, because by this point I was like, yes, I want to be a writer. Like, I'm 30 at this point. So like, or I think I was 29. So I was 29 at this point. So like, I had kind of figured out some things, not most things, but some things, enough to grope my way through the darkness. Right. And sorry, that sounds like WeHo on a Sunday night, but Saturday night. But that's
that is a sexual pun. I've never heard it. I mean, I just groped my way through the dark of Hollywood to try and find my way to my next job. Okay, I'm like, wow, Phil.
Right. Can I tell you too? One time, well, can I say one thing too? It's like there was one time when I had it was called a blind script deal. And a blind script deal, this is like years later. That's basically when you get like a studio or a network says like, we want to work with you specifically. And so the blind part of it is they don't know what your idea is. And they're like, but you have a contract with them. So you're going to make something. Right. But you don't, but they're like, yeah, just come to us with ideas, which was tight. It was super cool. But I told my barber at the time, back when I had hair, I told my barber at the time about that, and he was like, oh, you shouldn't go spreading that around. People are going to think that you were like putting out for it. And I literally said to him, I was like, if I could, like, if that's all it took, I would have done that years ago. Like, are you out of your mind? If it were that easy, please.
Oh my God. So
like, yeah, I wish. Do you know any? Like, where does one sign up for that?
Oh my God, I'm dead. That is so funny. Oh man, it's always at the barber shop. Always.
So,
oh man.
Oh yeah. But finishing off the kind of this part of the story, which is that like I always tell the story of the showrunner was like, I asked to be a writer for the second season of the show. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. He goes, if your ideas we're pitching out ideas for the second season tomorrow. If your ideas are good enough, then I'll let you do an outline. If your outline is good enough, we'll take it from there. It's just like, thanks. It's so helpful. Yeah. But it happened though, and that's how I got my first. That's how I got my first script produced.
Wow.
And from there, I was able to get my representation, and then my representation got me like staffing meetings, and then I got a job as a writer on Just Roll With It, which was a Disney Channel show, a multicam sitcom. And it's been from there. And, I've been very fortunate in that I've worked fairly, I mean, it's writing, so it's never consistent. But, like, I've been able to work consistently for about half a decade now as a writer. So that's a little bit about, that's a lot of bit about how my origin story.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And yeah, that's incredible. I mean, to work that long in this industry says a lot about your perseverance, really, because LA is such a pain in the ass
Yeah,
city.
it's
at
true.
times.
Huh?
Yeah, to stay here and actually do it is no easy feat. So my next question was kind of tapping into that. You know, I'm sure that, like we're talking about no easy feat, you know, what are maybe some personal struggles that you've had to go through as a writer here in Hollywood and LA that you feel ultimately kind of fueled you to become more creative and kind of push yourself as a writer?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. One of the it's really interesting because what you said is, I think, the truth of it, right? Which is like, it's an industry that rewards perseverance. I always like to think of it as like a sifting process, because I've seen so many people come and go who are very talented, to be perfectly honest. It's not, talent does play into it, but the majority of it is like, just, I always remember, again, I was probably like 22. This is when I was interning. There was a point I was interviewing for a job, and I was working at a company called Berman Braun, which doesn't exist anymore. And it was started by Lloyd Braun and Gail Berman. Lloyd Braun was like the president of ABC. He greenlit like Grey's Anatomy and Lost and Desperate Housewives all the same year, right?
Wow.
And Gail Berman had worked at like Warner Brothers. Yeah. And Gail Berman had been like the president of Fox. So she had greenlit like Arrested Development, and she had been like the president of WBTV. So she was there for like Buffy and all of that. So these were like titans of television, really and truly, like very impressive and interesting people. And I was like, I was interviewing for, I think it was to be like that's an assistant at like CAA or something like that, some job that I didn't need to be doing, some job that was for someone else, like literally. And I got like really upset because, like, no one likes rejection. But I remember this guy he was a really good guy. Robbie Salter is his name, and he ended up leaving the industry too, because to pursue, I think, became a lawyer or something like that. He couldn't hack it either, which is interesting that he gave me this advice. Maybe I shouldn't have taken this advice. But he said, like, because he could see that I was upset, and he literally said, and there were a lot of people who were very accomplished at that company, and he said, you can't let it get to you, right? You can't let the rejection get to you. He's like, the people at this company, Gail and Lloyd and all of these, everyone here, all these accomplished people, they have been rejected hundreds of times, but you can't let that change what's in your heart. And that's the truth. It's a lot of rejection, but you can either be, and different people respond to rejection differently. Some people get crushed by it. Some people run away. Some people let it turn them into really bitter people. I was kind of that for a time. That's actually how I came into Buddhism, which is actually how I know Alan. I was too bitter, and so I needed to get slightly less bitter, or like target my bitterness into something creative. But it really is that. It's just like, different people have different opinions, and what the audience likes changes from second to second, and you never know, and it's capricious, and part of it is just being at the right place in the right time. But you have to have really a positive attitude and really a firm foundation in who you are. And I think that goes for creative endeavors as well. Like, yes, you should listen to your audience. Yes, you should always strive to be better. When I write, I go through a process which I call burning my style down. Which is where, like, every couple of years, if I'm getting too good at writing, then that's my sign to myself that I'm getting like stagnant. And so, like, I really try to kind of recontextualize, like, okay, what am I writing? What is it that I want to say? How is it that I want to write? Like, what is going on here? But part of it too is you just have to, creative endeavors are so heart-wrenching. I'll ask you a question too, Alan, which is like, you're a photographer. Like, every time you show a photo, isn't there like a little bit of like a pit in your stomach where you're just kind of like, what if this is the bad one, and then I'll never take a good photo again, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's just and that's just how that's how I feel every time, every letter. It's like, this is the letter that will sink me. But it's about like being confident in yourself and understanding and appreciating, because I would argue too that if you're confident in yourself, you can take criticism and you can take critique.
Right.
And you realize you take it for what it is, and you take it for what the meaning of it is. What we say in the industry, we say like the note behind the note, right? And it only makes you better. It only makes you more creative. It only makes you stronger. So, and yeah, are you going to get some dumb notes? I've had some stupid notes. Like, I've had some terrible notes. But sometimes you do need to know to chuck a note that's bad. But for the most part, it's like, it's not coming from nowhere. So I guess that is just like being able to be receptive to feedback, being able to understand feedback, being able to, because sometimes you're going to get feedback and it's not going to be constructive, but just because it isn't constructive doesn't mean it's not something you don't need to know, doesn't mean it's not something that's not valuable. So I guess that because the industry is a mess, it's full of, and everyone who works in it is a mess, myself included. So and it's just kind of being able to sift through the nonsense and sift through the nonsense like right here in your heart, and really being able to say like, what is it that I'm trying to say? And I guess at the end of the day, one of the biggest lesson that I had to learn over time was that it's not in an endeavor like being in television or being in film and stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's not. Yes, you should always try and find, I guess, so it's twofold, right? And they seem like they conflict, but they are kind of the same thing. You should always do it for yourself. You should always make work that makes you happy. You should always be happy about what you're doing, even if you're doing something you don't like doing. Like, you should find something in it. Because, like, there's a lot of times where you're just kind of like, you're writing a show and you're just like, I do not care about this show. I don't care about these characters. I don't care about the showrunner's worldview. I don't care about any of it.
Right.
But I have to find something enjoyable. Like, so always have fun. I try to always have fun. Because I'm primarily a comedy writer. Can I swear on this?
Yeah.
I always say, like, my credo is, actually, you know what? I know this is a later question, so I'll do that later. I'll do that part later. But you should always do something. I read the pre questions. You should always do. It should always be something that means something to you, but you should also realize that it's for the audience as well. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with other writers who shall not be named, and it's just like, you do realize this isn't about you, right? It's not even about me. It's about the audience. Like, it's like, what are we going to do that can entertain the audience? And so that's kind of it. And especially television is such a collaborative medium, and writing is such a solitary activity. It's just learning how to speak to people and learning how to communicate. So I hope that was a good answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much. So I'm curious, you did talk about, coming to Buddhism in the midst of kind of everything. And so, this podcast is really born on this concept of, the lotus flower, of being kind of, this cause and effect, the causality and effect at the same time. So I like to ask each guest kind of, what is your, lotus blossom moment from all the shit and struggle that, is underneath, that's kind of going on? How have you kind of bloomed and become this amazing, lotus kind of creative life?
That's a good question. I'll tell you. It was actually it was in the election of 2020. It was actually, what day was it? Was November 4th, 2020. And it was specifically, the specific instance was because I had participated in like BLM and doing all of the protests and all of that, and like, look, we got tear gassed, and we were like facing, when we just had like our hands in the air, like literally like this, watching cops run past people who were actually looting so they could go beat the crap out of peaceful protesters. Like, this is all true. Like, call me a liar, but. And, going to, protesting at LA City Hall, and everyone being kettled in, and they had like their guns on us and all that. They're like in the rafters of like of LA City Hall and all of that. It's the whole thing. And, just going out there and really trying to like make a difference, to be perfectly honest, just really, really going out there, protesting, engaging civically, and trying to make a difference. I actually always, I talk about this all the time. After the first protest, which was in Santa Monica, and I saw like Santa Monica turn into like a war zone, basically. Oh shit, we gotta get out of here. And it was dangerous. Like it got very dangerous because of the way that let's say parties involved, escalated the situation beyond where it needed to be. And I remember I was sitting at home alone, and because this was before I went to the second protest I went to. Like I went to many, but this before I went to like the second one, which is gonna be at LA City Hall, which is even dicier, right? And I remember crying because I knew that the next time I went out to protest, I could be killed. But I wasn't crying because of that. I was crying because I knew I was going to go back out there. And so it's just, it's kind of reckoning with your own mortality. And I do think that those protests made a difference. And, but to answer your question, that's a little bit of the preamble, right? Now, to answer your question, we went through all of that, and people who protested, people who phone banged, people who engaged civically, all to, just being citizens of the United States. Like everyone worked very, very hard, incredibly hard, very earnestly in order to make a difference because, people were just saying like, something has to change. We can't keep going on this path, right? Mm-hmm. But then when the results came in, and it was the same divide. It was still 60-40. And I was just like, how could we have gone through all of this, all of the arguments and all of this, and it's still the same? Like, and it's still the same divide? How can this be? And it was insane. I was like, after all of that, the needle didn't move at all. And again, the results came in how the results came in. And so but I would argue that was more of like how it would have happened anyway, if that makes sense. And so like my thing was just kind of like, it should have, I guess the effect I was trying, I wasn't BLM protest, you can tell my politics. The effect I was trying to have on it, I was just like, which we did change minds and stuff like that, right? But it was just kind of like, how could it still be the same? Like how could, and I had to look introspectively, right? And there's two ways you can handle, there's multiple ways you can handle it, right? There's thousands of realms you can handle it, right? There's 10,000 realms in every moment, right? The way I did was like, okay, something is amiss here. Something is not connecting. Like all of the conversations and all of that, like it didn't sink in, like what's going on here. So I really did through 2021, I kind of became, so 2020, I like to say in 2020, I was a revolutionary. In 2021, I was a monk in search of enlightenment. And in 2022, I was a philosopher. But it was really just this kind of process of really going introspective and kind of looking to like, what is going on here? What is what is true cause, right? What is actual, cause and effect? Since we're, this is a Lotus podcast, we can talk about, it is like Namyo Renge Kyo, it is cause and effect. It is karma. It is like what does this actually mean? Mm-hmm. And so I really, really went deep into study. I really went deep into meditation. I went deep into chanting, and I, most importantly, as it turned out, was I really went introspectively. I really went deep inside of myself. And as it turns out, there was a whole lot of garbage down there that I had not dealt with. A whole lot of trauma that I had not dealt with, right? I mean, we all have it. Yeah. And I thought that I had, but what I had done was basically find ways to shove it down or get around it and just not deal with it. And as it turned out, I was afraid to deal with it. And, it was hard, especially in 2021, because you don't even, there's no map for this thing, right? Yeah. And it's just what is it? What is going on? I remember there were times where I was something is amiss. Why I can't, I couldn't even figure it out. I was just reality itself, I couldn't even figure it out. And as it just turned out, it was just kind of the process of getting over yourself, right? And it's the process of being able to express your trauma express the feelings inside of you and get out. I always tell people I've only had one panic attack in my life, but luckily by that point I wasn't panicked. Because I had been doing these things and I had been going through this whole process, and I realized that when I was in, for me in this specific instance, it was a panic attack, but I knew that it was my body trying to get out all of the trauma that I had been holding on to for who knows how long, 30 some odd years, right? And it was just so, oh, you scream and you cry and you let it all out. I mean, I was at home alone, who cares, right? And so you just kind of let it out, and then it doesn't have the power over you. And that's one of the things that I really learned, is that like our feelings and our emotions and our trauma, the only power they have over us is when we try to ignore them. And like, it's really just, and it's not even bad. It's not bad. It's just it's just your body, your soul, whatever you want to say, your consciousness, whatever you want to say, saying like, okay, in order for you to be successful, you need to deal with this. So here it is. Like, and you can choose whether or not you deal with it. And then most of the time we go, no, I don't want to do it. But if you just lean in, you tear up for 5 minutes, and then you never have to deal with it again. And once you do that, you have more space and you have more capacity to like talk to other people. You have more capacity to be empathetic to other people. You have more capacity to breathe. Like, seriously, it's as simple as that. Like, you have more space and you have more capacity because you're not relitigating the same old issues over and over again. I think I heard once that, like, I think it's something like, I'm going to get the percentage wrong. It's something like 60% of thoughts we have in a day are the same thoughts from the day before. And it's like, could you imagine if we could just like chuck the ones that we don't need? Like, you just express them and be done with them. And then like you have more bandwidth to do what you want to do. Like, literally. And I guess the biggest thing for me was I really kind of learned, and I just think that this is just a function of our society, and I don't think that it's anyone's fault in particular. Like, honestly, that was the thing I learned too, which was there's no like cabal of people sitting in a smoke-filled room like, here's how we'll do it. Like, those meetings do happen, but like the whole world of it all, the global of it all, that is not the case. Or, and like, look, maybe it is, and then I'll come back on here and tell you that I was dead wrong. I'm more than happy to do that. But it's the mindset, right? And we as humans really get caught in a binary, right? And it's just like, it's either this or it's that. And it's like, but is it? It kind of isn't. And there was literally a point in 2022 where I was like, yeah, this is where I keep getting stuck. I keep thinking it's one thing or it's the other. And so I'm limiting my own imagination on what it could be. And like, to the point to where I literally did exercises with myself where if I would say that, and you know how the feeling is. It's like when you're getting stuck and you're getting stressed and all of that. That's when I was stuck in a binary. So, okay, I'm thinking it's either this or it's that. And I would actually challenge myself. I'd say, okay, Phil, you have to think up a third option that is different from either one of those. And then once you can come up with a third one, you can come up with a fourth one and a fifth one and all of that. And your thinking becomes more flexible. I always call it like, instead of thinking in binary, thinking in ternary, because ternary means like three, right? And it's just like, let me just be flexible. Like, let me think flexibly. Let me have more imagination. Let me, why is it? It's going to be this way. Says who? Like, and it usually says me. I'm telling myself that. I'm limiting myself. So, and when I was able to do that, I was able to live a more, what I'd call value creating life. And I was able to be there for people more. And I was able to help people more because I wasn't so stuck on my own nonsense. I could actually or if I did get stuck on my own nonsense, I could say like, you know what is this pulling out of me? Like, why am I responding in this way? And so like, that's kind of like the beauty of it. That's the beauty of, that's the lotus flower, right? Like, you blossom and you seed it blossoms and seeds at the same time. So like, if you blossom as a person, as a human being, as a bodhisattva, right? Then you also plant seeds for other people, and you can watch those bloom as you seed other people. You watch them bloom as well. You spread your seed.
That's literally why I started laughing. I was like, oh no, is he going to say it?
I know. I was like,
as you're blossoming, you're also seeding.
You have a dirty mind, Alan Zaki.
Oh, I do. A dirty mind. Terrible. No, thank you so much. And yeah, I think everything you just shared is really, not only is it very Buddhist, but it's also just kind of a life affirming philosophy for you to kind of understand your own self, right? That it's more than just this binary. And if more of us kind of think in that way, like so much more can get done. You know, it's not this versus that.
Could you imagine?
I mean, yeah, incredible. Has there been
It's
a specific achievement or kind of something that you personally take kind of pride in, but maybe you're not necessarily known for?
You know what? I'll do one of each. One is actually from like Buddhism, actually, and it's a personal achievement, though I didn't do any other work. Which was one of the most rewarding experiences of my entire life was, and I think Alan actually knows him too. There's this guy named Guillaume, who was a French guy, really nice guy, an animator, really talented, really kind guy, and like I was kind of like working with him in like the same Buddhist organization, and he had broken up with, he had been introduced to Buddhism through his girlfriend, and they had broken up, and he was really afraid to go to meetings or like go and, you know, participate in like sort of like community activities and stuff like that, because he was afraid he would see her, even though she lived in a whole other area. And so like for a year, like every week, like at least one day a week or maybe 2 days, I would go and I would visit him, and I'd say like, we'd talk and he'd say where he was at and I would help him through it. Or we would do some like study stuff or something like that. And he's just kind of being there for him. And I remember there was one, and like little by little, he was able to come out more. He was able to like, you know, he was able to have a little bit more courage to come out and talk to people and stuff like that. But he was still like really afraid from going to big meetings, because he was afraid he would see his ex-girlfriend there with, and by that point, I mean, this has been a year, she had gotten like a new boyfriend. And so like finally I challenged him, because I felt he was ready to like kind of like host the meeting and like be up in front of everybody. And he did it. And he actually saw her after that meeting. And he told me later, he was like, yeah, I saw it, and it didn't matter. Like, and I wasn't bothered at it at all. I could see it, and I could see her with her boyfriend, and it was like nothing. Wow. And to me, that was just being able to be there. And that really taught me, that is honestly one of the most important lessons I ever learned, which is like, sometimes it's just being there for the person and because he's the one who did it. Like, you know what I'm saying? He did the meeting. Like, he's the one who overcame it. Like, he is the one, but I was able to be there for him, and when he needed to talk about it, I was able to like listen to him and like, you know, well, but maybe think about it from this perspective, or, you know, or just like, honestly, sometimes it's just like chanting with the person. Sometimes it's just being there with the person and showing that you actually care about them. Absolutely. And like, that was a really important lesson. So I guess it's not technically a personal accomplishment, because I didn't do anything. I guess I drove. I drove and stuff like that. I drove to his place and stuff like that. So that's on the personal side, which is like, anytime you can watch a person kind of blossom into their best possible self, like it's thoroughly rewarding. And that's one of the most it just, even in all of my years of practicing Buddhism, that's one of the most rewarding experiences. I go back to it even to this day. And then I guess on a professional thing, okay, I'll say two. I don't know if I can talk about one, though. One was, it was very cool to get to write for Bugs Bunny. That was neat. I wrote on the reboot of Tiny Toons, which is still yet to come out. They never come out. But like, that was really, really cool to like kind of be able, yeah, you know, writing for the Looney Tunes. Like, you know, I was writing for the Tiny Toons, but, you know, Bugs was there.
Yeah.
I put words in that rabbit's mouth. That was really neat. That was really, really neat and cool. And the other, yeah, I guess whatever, it's done now. I mean, we'll pull the episode. There was another show that I worked on, and the show had, I'll do this, I won't say what the show's title is. Just because when the episode airs, I don't care. But like, it'll be a second before the episode airs. but like there was a character that was I was writing like the mid-season episode, and this show has like, this is not specific, not in this day and age, it had like werewolves and vampires and all those sorts of like spooky characters in it, which was cool and which was fun. And so it was like the were characters, and like I was trying to like present a narrative of like because there's like werewolves and tigers and stuff like that, and like the joke was like, well, and I was like, it was like literally about like getting along, like that was the whole theme I was going for, and it was like, were's fight like cats and dogs, mainly because they are cats and dogs, which is like the corniest pun.
Love it.
But one of the things that came up was I was tasked by the showrunner to write to add two more were characters, because we had like other characters, we had like multiple were characters, we wanted to fill it out a little bit more, so she gave a suggestion of two. One was like a were mouse, which was fun. And then she's like, and do a funny animal, like, and her suggestion was like a were armadillo, which is a were armadillo is objectively funny. And I was like, but just me, I like to fashion myself as punk rock anyway. And I was like, I could do better than that. And so I was like, what is the were character you wouldn't want to be? And so I came up with a were skunk. And I made him like a loner that believed in conspiracy theories, and he believed in the Illuminati and stuff like that. And so I actually got a fair amount of pushback on that, not from actually even the showrunner, but from like the studio and the network and all of that. And my theory was, and I did go to bat for that, because like part of the whole episode is like, yeah, different people can work together, and like even like the skunk fits in. Even the skunk belongs here with everybody else. Just because he has like super stink powers doesn't mean that he's not worth being around, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's part of havoc building community and stuff like that. And the sorts of people that he was based on are what I would classify as troubled young men, if that makes sense. And my thing was, I really went to bat for this. I was like, because I was like, I would rather do a character like this, and we can go through the notes, and we can fit. Which, by the way, to the network's credit, they did let me put in the conspiracy theory and stuff like that.
Nice.
My thing was like, I would rather those people, those young men, feel that they belong here, than go to a neo-Nazi board, and then start causing trouble. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's part of it. Like, and and so I guess for me, that was a big accomplishment, because it was like being able to, and understandably, right? You want to be careful about the sort of like narratives that you're putting out there and who you're courting. But it's like, but I do think that if we put the effort into it, if we put the work into it, we can create a space for people. And like, who knows how it will change, right? I'm gonna tell a quick story of the Buddha, right? Which is, he was doing his Buddha thing, and these stories he's always like doing. They never say what he's doing before, like it's always just like when the thing starts. And he's like, he was at a monastery, and there were these monks there, and there was one monk who was like sick, and he was like bandaged up, and he was like on death's door. And the Buddha was like, hey, and like, look, this probably didn't happen, but like, that's not the point. Let's just be real here. And he's like, wait, he was not taken to this, didn't come on TikTok or nothing like that. But that's not the point. And so the Buddha asked this monk, he's like, why aren't any of the other monks like helping you? Like, why aren't they, like, you're sick? Why aren't they helping you? And his response was, well, I wasn't there for them when I was well. This is what I deserve. And so Buddha changes his bandages, and he gives him soup or whatever, I don't know. And he makes a full recovery, of course. And he, not only that, but he like really reaffirms himself and becomes like, an incredible monk. And then this is my favorite part of like Buddha stories. And even in like, we talk, Alan and I know each other from the Soka Gakkai International. It's just like, Daisaku Ikeda and Josei Toda, where like they're just like sometimes they just get like real, and it's just really fun to me. And so like the Buddha goes and he goes to these other monks and he just lets them have it, and he's like, "How dare you?" He's like, it doesn't matter that he was a dick back then. Like, you don't, like, that doesn't mean you're shitty to him now. It's like, because you never know what will change a person. Like, you never know. So you should always extend kindness to somebody who is just somebody in need. And like, and I don't know, that's a little bit of what I was trying to channel there, which is like, yeah, I mean, these are troubled young men. But it's just like, but they need somebody. They need something. And like, this is an opportunity. Like, this is an opportunity. Like, this isn't like, we can't get all of them, but if we get one, that's worth it. If one person feels like they belong and that stops them from going down a bad path and going down a self-destructive path or a path that's destructive to other people, then it was worth it. Then it was worth all of the arguments, and it was worth all the fights, it was worth all of the notes, it was worth all of it. And I guess so that's my big accomplishment. So
amazing. That excuse me, that project has yet to air. You said that's why you can't kind of talk about it?
Yes.
Or say the title. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Keep an eye out for that. Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. Cool. When the episode airs, I'll tell you. You can put it on the socials.
There we go. Yes, we'll make sure it goes out.
That was my big thing over 2022 was getting rid of social media. So,
gotcha. Yeah. So, what do you consider to be your greatest weakness? And when you see that kind of arise, what action do you take to kind of overcome it in the moment?
That's a good question. That's an excellent question. This is a really deep show, Alan. Well, you're a deep guy. I shouldn't have expected anything less. It's all about the questions you ask. That's really good. That's a really good question. Impatience. Like, honestly, I'll talk. There's a concept of like your one fundamental evil, and like that's the thing that all of the negative things in your life branch out from. So it's not that you're this and you're that. It's just like there's one root cause, and like it kind of expresses itself in different ways. And so I really had to like kind of look into that. And impatience. I am incredibly impatient. I was like, it should have already happened. And that gets me frustrated. That makes me irritable. That makes me like a glib prick. Like that makes you go like, fuck you, dude. You don't know me. But it's totally impatience because, yeah, that's totally it. And it hinders me because like sometimes things, it's like the concept of planting the seed, right? Like I can't, no matter how much you lecture a seed, it's not going to flower any sooner. Like it doesn't care. Right. Like the lotus flower doesn't care. It's going to bloom in its good time when it needs to, when it's supposed to. And sometimes I can't tell you how many. It is really coming down outside. I can't tell you how many times there have been instances where, yeah, it didn't happen, but it didn't happen because the factors were not in place. Like, and so that's on me. So then I'm screaming and crying and yelling and gnashing my teeth and all of this and rending my clothing. And how could it be? But the truth of the matter is, like, just chill. And to answer the second part of your question, it's when I get in that place, I might do a non-binary exercise, or sometimes I'll even say like, okay, Phil, yes, that's true. It should be this way. When I'm super duper right, I'll say like, okay, yes, Phil, it should be that way. There, you've had the thought. Are you happy now? Let it go. And it's like, and sometimes you just do that and you're just kind of like, you had the thought. There's no need to keep going over it. Just let it go. And that helps me get to sleep at night. Because sometimes you're like awake at night and you're just kind of like, you're like fretting and all of that. And the truth of the matter is like, just let it go. Like you thought it, it's done. Like move on. And, if it continues to present itself, you can assess it when that happens again. But the truth of the matter is going over and over again in your head and getting frustrated. And that not only is it not helpful, it's counterintuitive because then you get agitated and you're like mean to the people who are trying to be there for you. It's like a whole thing. And I think there was one other, and then you chant, right? You just like, if all else fails, you just go and you chant. You're like, okay, well, I don't know. And Namyo Renge Kyo. Like, it's, just sit your ass down and like get over yourself and just be like, believe in, because that's what it is. Like, believe in cause and effect. Believe that if you've made the cause for the right action, that it's going to manifest itself. And it's not your job to coordinate all of that, to be perfectly honest. It's the universe's job, right? It's like, it's your job to chill out, and when the situation comes and like these sort of like the moment of truth arrives, to be ready to have the wisdom to behave properly in the moment. And so that's kind of how I deal with my impatience.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think the takeaway point of that is, when these things kind of arise, having that inner dialogue, right, is actually more important for the long lasting, moment than just to kind of keep on simmering on that constantly and not moving forward, right. And like you said, Buddhism is always about, let's move forward. So.
Yes, hone a meal, right, from this moment forward.
Yes. I'm curious, you kind of tapped into this a little bit before, but, has there been like a made it moment or a real highlight of your career thus far that you really kind of were like, I'm striving for this with all my might, and now I finally made this happen?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've had a couple of those, but I'll say the one that was... I've been writing for years before I even had this moment. But it was something that I can say is I was a writer on a show called Monster High, which is on Nickelodeon, and some of the episodes that I've written have kind of like aired on that show. There were two moments with that one. It's really interesting. Of all the shows in the world, Monster High was the one where I really kind of like figured out that I was a writer. It's really weird. But I guess, I don't know, I wrote a lot of episodes on it. I wrote like 10 episodes of the show. And so like, I was, it's crazy. And it was freelance too. Shay Fontana, incredible person, incredible showrunner. She's so talented. She's so funny. She does that. She does Polly Pocket. She's just she is what I would say is like the best possible version of a showrunner, where she knows what she wants, but she also lets you just be creative and just kind of like, and you just put it out there, and then she just adjusts it to, what she wants it to be for the show, which is, and it's just like, it's a very cool dynamic. Sorry, this is going to turn to the Shay Fontana fan club podcast, but there was a moment in, so she just kept coming back, and every time I'd be like, I don't know why you keep coming back to me, because I'm transgressive in punk rock anyway, and Monster High is very affirmative and nice and stuff like that. I was like, okay, well, whatever, dude. And then like I'm on here like, let's see what you think about this. How about this joke? There were two. One was when my first episode of that show aired, which was called, oh my God, That Thing You Deuce. And the reason this was different from, I know, right? The reason this was different from other shows that even because you have like the written by credit, right? But those are usually at like the bottom of the screen. This one had a whole like title card and my picture, and like it was like written by Philip Walker, and like it was on my television screen, and it was dark. It was night. So it was like dark, and it was just like, oh, wow. It was just like, whoa, this is crazy. A thing that I wrote is being beamed into my television right now. Wow. And the second instance, again with Monster High, randomly enough, is I was visiting it was actually this past, again, and I've been writing I've been like a working writer like for half a decade, and this happened like over the holiday. This happened like in December of 2022. Wow. I was in the restaurant. I was visiting my mom in South Carolina. She lives in South Carolina now, and we were in a restaurant. It was a seafood restaurant. We were waiting for our crab legs, but they had a television on, in the corner, and they had like Nickelodeon on, and all of a sudden, a commercial for Monster High came on the television, and I said to my mom, I was like, oh, that's Monster High. That's the show I'm writing on. And like just the ability to be able to say to your mom, like when you're just randomly at some seafood restaurant, that's the show I worked on, was a very, very cool moment.
That's awesome, though. I think, yeah, those moments that, you work for so long, like you said, you've been doing this for, half a decade, which is amazing. And it's kind of like, yeah, to have the ability to show what you do to the people that you love, it almost brings you probably more joy than, being like, I got this or I got that within the industry. It's kind of like, okay, great. People don't really care, but to say it to
right. And the money is nice, but the money comes. Totally sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good.
Yeah, the money comes and the money goes, but like it's like you said, it's those connections with the people. That's the most important part. I mean, that's I didn't get into it for the money, right? Like I got into because I like television. It's just kind of like those are the cool things.
Yeah, absolutely. So what kind of brings you the most happiness now versus kind of when you first started out just doing like PA work and trying to get into the industry? I'm sure those things are probably have shifted now since you've been doing this for a bit of time now.
It's interesting. The funny thing is, I kind of have come back around, which is because you're right. But I appreciate it from a different perspective now, I guess, if that makes sense. Like when I first moved out here, it was like you come here and like, I mean, look, I grew up in like the 90s and we didn't have like the phones were attached to the walls and like we didn't have like like the most powerful, when I was in college making student films, the most powerful camera I had looks like garbage next to this camera, right? Like, please give me a break. We didn't understand how television and movies were made. I just thought that, like, I don't know, it was like a magic box. And I didn't even think that I could. It's not that I didn't think I would be able to do that I thought that I didn't think I would be able to work in like entertainment. Mm-hmm. That was just something people that I didn't know did. Right. Like that was just not my experience, if that makes sense. And it's just like I know nobody. I was in Chicago and then Atlanta. I know nobody who worked at TV. Please, please. But put that. It should be the faces of my obituary, right? Indignance. He was indignant till the very end. But when I first moved out here, it was just so cool to see like all of the, because in LA, and for those of you who don't live in Los Angeles, like they have posters for TV shows and movies, which is so funny because this is where they make it. So I don't know who they're trying to advertise to. Maybe I guess it's probably for like social media and stuff like that. And so they can get the word out or to brag. The tourists, yeah, I guess so. I mean, but it's always just like advertisements for your job. Like, could you imagine? And I guess like, yes, but it's like, but it was so cool to just be somewhere where you're just kind of like soaking in it, right? Where you're just kind of like there. And I remember being on the Warner Brothers lot and the Universal lot, and just seeing all of this cool stuff, and just like kind of being there in the like working on shows, even as an assistant. I mean, I liked getting the coffee and doing the copies for a while. It's because you're just like, you're there and you're like, because I worked on shows like The Middle and Weeds and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So I worked on some and I said Orange is the New Black earlier. So I worked on some very cool shows. Yeah. And like, you're just like there and you're like, oh, it's happening. This is where it happens. And and it's funny because all the offices are like super dumpy, but like they're not as nice as you think they are. Yes. But you're just there and there's just like an energy and like going on set. And like, I remember the first thing I did when I got out here, like I had been out here for like a week. And I got because they're free, they give them away. But like a ticket to go be like in the studio audience of a taping of a sitcom. I was just like, I just found whatever show. It's just like I don't care. Like I don't care. I just want to be live, filmed in front of a live studio audience. I wanted to be that. I wanted to be so close to it. And just being in the offices and you're seeing all of these really talented people these really talented artists do some of the most talented people on the planet just do what they're good at. Right. Then then in pursuit of it, it became a little bit for its own sake, and, you know, becoming a writer and getting a script on the air and then getting staffed and all of that. And now I've honestly come back a little bit around to, like, the thing that kind of brings me joy and the thing that I kind of look for is just kind of, it is that again, of just that sort of feeling of just being in there and being in that sort of magnetic energy with people, with really talented people. I guess the difference I would say is now I just want to be around those talented people, and, like, I just want to be, because if you let people be talented, they'll always amaze you, and it'll always, one of the best lessons I ever learned when I was in a socially conscious sketch group called the Bill of Wrongs, and I wrote, directed, and starred in a sketch that we did. And I remember from that story, like, and it came out incredibly well, and people were like, oh wow, this is such a great sketch, you did such a good job, and this and that. And, like, the only thing I could, and still to this day, say is, like, the only reason it came out as well as it did was because of everybody else. Because the other actors were, like, just brought their A game. Because the director, Kyle Morrison, incredible director, because Kyle did such an incredible job of directing, because we had an incredible editor, and, like, that's what made it good. Like, you know, yeah, I wrote it, and all of that, sure. But, like, they did it, their performances, the work they did, it just astounded me. And, like, if you let creative people be creative, then you'll look at it and you'll be like, wow, I could have never imagined that in my wildest dreams. My scope was so narrow. And, like, look at this incredible, beautiful thing that you have created. So I guess it's that, but, like, I just want to make, it's like the pursuit of making work that inspires people and that I also get inspired by.
I'm curious, because do you feel like you're one, because I think this is like the second time that you've kind of said this, do you find it hard to take a compliment or to fully kind of appreciate the work that you do? I only say that because, you know, I do agree that it's a group effort, but it seems as though you've said, like, it's because
you're right.
people that this thing is.
You're right. No, that's fair. No, that's observant. That's very observant. Yeah. Yeah, you know, that is something I work on. You know, it's so funny. There's a guy named Gonzalo, who I think you may have, I think you know him. You've interacted with him before in your doings. And there was one point, and he said something to me, and it was very true. I try to live this to this day, which is, because whenever someone give me a compliment, I'd be like, oh no, you know, this and that. And he said, because he struggled with that too. He's like, you know, that doesn't make people feel better. He's like, when someone gives you a compliment, you know what you can say? Thank you. And I was like, that is so true. But that comes, like, you can't just say thank you.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Alan. That's true. You're right. No, I do. And I think that's a little bit of imposter syndrome sort of thing too, which is the thing that most artists have, but, like, it's insane because that's what makes you not creative. And yeah. No, I think that's a really excellent observation. Yeah. So I'm working on it. Thank you for bringing it up. No, it's good. You're right.
You're so welcome, and thank you. No, I brought it up because I actually I just did another interview, and the guest was talking about the same thing, and I brought up the fact that I feel the same way. I'm not one to, as an artist, I really don't take compliments well, and I just kind of want to, like, put it on everyone else, like, oh yeah, it was a team effort. So I think as creatives, right, it is difficult to just say that, like, thank you so much. I worked my ass off, or I really love this project, and we did do a great job, you know, but to take full credit for that is not easy all the time. So yeah. So my next question.
Right. That's true. It isn't. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I'm curious, and you've already kind of shared about this, so you don't have to go crazy with it, but kind of like, what is your work ethic like? And also the other part of that is, you know, you're talking about being in these rooms of writers, you know, and being on shows in Hollywood, which is so incredible. But do you find it that it's very kind of closed off to the bigger picture, the bigger world, and it's very much kind of like this brothers club, or, you know, not as open as it could be? And if that is the case, like, how do you kind of stand up in that? That was a long question. Sorry.
Yeah, it was an excellent question. What was the first part again?
Just kind of like, what is your work ethic like in the sense of kind of being in these
Work ethic. Okay, yeah. Gotcha. I've always gotten compliments in that, like, I actually have a pretty strong work ethic, and that the way that I look at it, I'm getting better at it. Is I think a lot of people see like writing as a marathon, where you're just going through it, and then you get to the finish line. And I look at it as like a puzzle I have to solve before time runs out, and so. I'm always like, oh shit, I only got 3 more days. So, but I always somehow manage to do it. But I guess, yeah, part of it for me is one of the things that I have learned is to give myself the space and the time, and kind of overcoming that sort of creative shortcoming that a lot of creatives have, which is part of it is I'm just like, you get paralyzed by fear because you're just like, well, this is going to be bad. But especially with like writing, I mean, it's just words on a computer screen, and it's like you can just rewrite it, and so it's just like, yeah, just kind of be there. And like I'm going to quote, have you ever heard of an author? He's a Japanese author named Haruki Murakami.
Yes.
He is an incredible writer. But he wrote a book called Novelist as a Vocation, is I believe what the correct title is. And it's so interesting because it's like a book on writing, and like a Western book on writing, it would be like, and then in Act 2 you need to do this. But it was very Japanese, and then he was just kind of like, yeah, and then this feeling, and then like, and here's an anecdote from my childhood and all of that. But one of the things that he talks about is just kind of like that sort of creative spark. It's always there, and it's just like it's about like positioning yourself to be there to receive it, right? That sort of creativity is a gift that you get. Who knows where it comes from? Whenever people ask me where I get my ideas from, I always say, when you find out, let me know. Because like, who knows? I have no idea. And so it is about like, it just comes to you, right? If you let it. And to me, what I have had to learn over time is kind of overcoming that sort of fear that paralyzes you. And sometimes it's just like, okay, Phil, get your ass in front of that keyboard and start typing. And like, who cares if it's bad? Because if you do it 5 days ahead of when it's due, then you can go back 3 days and like make it better when you have more space to kind of even think on that. And the truth of the matter is, once you get into it, the muse will hit you anyway. So that's kind of how I do my like sort of work ethic. And also too, it's like, which is why it's funny, it's easier for me to hit deadlines when I'm getting paid. And it's not even because of like money concerns. It's because like, oh shit, I don't want to fuck up. Like, it's actually really more of the pressure of like someone's expecting something. Yeah. So that's kind of how I do it. But I've been getting much better about that, and it's actually made my writing better too, because it gives me time to like, instead of having to be like, all right, here it is, and let's figure it out. I have 12 hours. It's just kind of like a little bit more of a process. And so the second part of your question is yes. The answer is yes. I feel like people in Hollywood are, and I'm going to choose my words carefully here, but like people in Hollywood, because some of my best friends work in the industry, but people in Hollywood are incredibly well-meaning, and they're some of the kindest, most thoughtful people on the planet, but it can become very insular. And like a lot of us, I mean, that sort of industry is like, I imagine it's probably similar, correct me if I'm wrong, to like photography and stuff like that. And then like you get into it because you like it. Like, it's not like, this is because it's like, it's difficult, right? Like, it's not an easy thing to get into and make a living at. So like on some level, you really do have to like it. And like, we can get very caught up in, I include myself, we can get very caught up in like, and then this movie, and then this show, and then this artistic thing. And like, and that's really how you express yourself. And it can be very insular, and it can become very inside baseball. And you kind of forget the wider world. That is actually, it's funny you mentioned that. That's one of the things I've been working on recently, just as a writer. I think I mentioned switching up my style. Is like now, I I get inspiration from real life, and I'll just like, because people are, I don't know if you've noticed, but people are batshit insane and incredibly specific and like really interesting. And like, they're far more interesting than any movie or TV show you'll ever see. But like, it needs to be packaged properly, if that makes sense. Like, you know, this is it's an old adage, but it's true. It's like, if you want to get inspiration to be a writer, just go sit on a bench and watch people, because people are fascinating. People are so weird. And that's it's right. And it's made me a better writer, because then you see, like, you kind of have a window into, you know, I liken it to, like, I live in an apartment here. I can see other buildings from here, right? And I have a set of binoculars, actually, from when I went to the visit to the Grand Canyon. I bought them, but like, I have them. And like, if I wanted to look into like another apartment, right? You would, I know, it's so creepy. You could see into a person's apartment, but you could never know what it's like to be there. Like, and that's observation, but you could extrapolate out and say, like, if you see a person like, I don't know, hanging laundry, because like I live across the street from like this, like, it's like a work building, and it's like it's like USC and shit like that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's actual like commercial real estate and stuff like that. And so like, you'll see them like cleaning, you know what I'm saying? You look over, like, you need binoculars, you look over and you see them like cleaning and stuff like that, and you see like the lights going on and off, and it's like, you don't know what it's like to be in there. If you were in there, it would be a completely different experience.
Yeah.
But like, you can extrapolate out, and that's art, right? And so like, for me, it's just when I am the person on the bus, like the person on the bus, you can write a whole movie on the person on the bus. If you can't write a movie about the person on the bus, then you're not a writer, like, you're not a good writer, right? And like, so and I do think that we could benefit from, and I say we, and I mean people in the industry, could benefit more from kind of observing the wider world and actually seeing people as they are, and then presenting it that way, rather than like presenting, because like, the truth of the matter is, it's nothing nefarious. Like, we just kind of had this kind of weird there's just this weird mindset where it's just kind of like, this is how you're supposed to present it, and the audience expects it to be presented this way. And it's just like, what? Or we could just present themselves to them and see how they respond to it. And yes, the answer to the second part of the question is absolutely. It's like, yeah, it's definitely what we call a good old boys network. Absolutely, absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And that's the truth. You do have to know something at some point. Like, talent does come into it at some point, or at least the ability to get along with people. So advice I would give to people who want to be in the industry is, like, the truth of the matter is, you can be the most talented person on the planet, but if people don't like getting along with you, if you're like cause issues and are argumentative and stuff like that, you're out. Like, because they don't want to deal with it, because they can find someone else. They can find someone else just as talented as you, or maybe slightly less talented than you, but they enjoy spending time with them. They enjoy speaking with them. And so, like, that's kind of the key to it, right? Which is just being a reasonable person. And it's hard, right? Because it's a creative endeavor. And it's full of sensitive artists. But you kind of have to learn how to navigate that. And I include myself when I say sensitive artists. Like, you kind of have to learn how to navigate that. So it's difficult, but I will tell you this. All you have to do is get that one, right? And you can spin any of it, right? And once you get on one show, all you have to do is get on one show. All you have to do is get on one movie. All you have to do is write one script. All you have to do, once you do that, you can say you've done it. And you'd be surprised. It's not, the gatekeeping really isn't like, we're keeping those people out. It's really more of like, it's such a hectic, insane process that like most people are like, I just don't want to deal with someone that I have to like train, who's going to like fumble around while I'm getting like screamed at by the director and the writer in the studio and all of that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, they don't want to deal with, and then I have to deal with this. Like, it's just one less problem that they have to deal with. So it's really, you could argue it's out of laziness more than anything.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, that you make a really valid point though, because that idea that I think a lot of the creative industries in general, it is kind of like, who can you be in a room with or a bus with or a car with for X amount of days, X amount of time. And yes, you may not be the most talented or like the best at what you do, but I'd rather hang out with you and work with you creatively than deal with, Joe Blow, who's an asshole, but a really great whatever, as a writer or otherwise. So, yeah.
Right. Screaming about Joe Blow screaming about his vision and shit like that. Who wants to deal with that?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious, kind of, what's one thing or maybe many things that you kind of learned about yourself as a writer in this industry that you didn't know about yourself prior to even getting into it?
This goes back to kind of the thing that you brought up earlier. So I thank you. I wouldn't have probably even thought about this if you hadn't been so had such a cool introspective question, which is to learn that I actually am interesting and have a point of view. Honestly, I think that I've always I've always wanted to be able to express myself, and I think that's kind of why I was a writer in the first place. But I just really did not have the self-confidence to say yeah, no, I am interesting, or oh yeah, no, I do have a point of view that people are interested. It is kind of like a weird thing. Once you start, after you've gotten that third script on the air, you're like, oh, maybe people aren't interested in hearing what I have to say or my take on the world. Who knew? Who knew? So yeah, that was kind of it. And I'm sorry, the question was specifically on me, right? It wasn't on other people. My immediate thing is to deflect onto other people. So yeah, which I was gonna say that other people are interesting as well. And I guess, and it's very weird that I learned that I was able to, through this process, I kind of grew up and I was as an introvert, and then I discovered that I was an extrovert. It's actually a kind of funny story in that my parents are introverts, hardcore introverts, and I always thought I was an introvert. Yet I always was talking to people and wanted to talk to people, but I was just awkward. I think that's why I like multicam sitcoms, to be perfectly honest, because there'd be a laugh track. Since I was a latchkey kid, it's just us in here. We're all laughing at the same joke. There were people who were laughing at this joke. They enjoyed it as well. But then when the lockdown happened, and people got really bad at communicating with each other, they came down to my level. And then I realized that I was the most social and outgoing person. And so then I just popped up with them. That's some real Mystic Law shit. Where it's just oh, now I get it. And then I was oh, I actually am an extrovert. But, just kind of working and being a writer. And it's funny because it's such a solitary exercise. But I guess working in television, I just learned that I knew how to talk to people. And that I did actually know how to express myself. I wasn't just some weirdo, awkward person who always puts their foot in their mouth and things of that nature. Buddhism helped with that a lot as well. But it all works in tandem, right?
Yes. Yeah. All encompassing, if you will. I'm glad I could bring that out of you, Phil, and that the realization.
Thank you.
There you go. See, you did it. It's perfect. She just said thank you.
See, I'm learning little by little.
Yes, all of us. Yes. Who has been your biggest supporter or fan that's really kind of kept you going in this process? The ups and downs of writing and being in Hollywood and this job and that job, and kind of, keeping you smooth sailing through this course.
That's a good question. My parents, for sure. There was a point before I even moved out here where I was trying to decide. I was do I want to? Because if I didn't go into this, I was going to go into linguistics, which is funny because I like language and stuff like that. I'm a writer, as it turns out, now that I think on it. And I was yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll just go to Japan, and because I lived in Japan for half a year, and maybe I'll go to Japan and teach English or something like that. And my dad really encouraged me to. He's no, I think you should give it a shot. And that turned out to be the right encouragement. My mother as well. I mean, she's always been very supportive. And then just my friends, they're, because it can get hard, and and your friends are there, and the ones that you come up with and the ones that you don't, the ones who are in the industry with you, the ones that aren't, the ones who then when you're there, I still talk to my friends from high school and stuff like that, and then they're just you see that they're proud. You know, we're all like theater kids together, and you see that they're proud of you, and things of that nature. And then like Buddha, you know, I don't know, the Buddhist community I'm a part of, you know, like seriously, SGI, like seriously, it's very encouraging, always very encouraging, and like, yeah, go for it. Like just the unabashed, like, yeah, you can just go for it. Like, so a lot of people.
What is kind of, you know, you really talked about BLM and everything that was going on, but, you know, obviously COVID happened, which is crazy 3 years ago, and we're still now kind of coming out of it. But what is the thing that kind of kept you going through all of that creatively, as well as working and wanting to stay this course instead of just being like, fuck this, I'm out, I'm leaving LA?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because actually during that whole time period, it was actually incredibly difficult to be creative and to kind of like everything. It was just like you were writing on shifting sand, like you're standing on shifting sand, right? It was like kind of even hard to figure out, like, what is it that I'm trying to say? You know, what is my point of view? Because I mean, everything was so up in the air, up for grabs. This is a difficult question for me to answer because I guess I'll give you the best answer I can, which is it's just that impulse. It was that thing like I talked about, like the muse, right? It was just like the desire to express myself and the desire to tell stories. And like, that's what kept me going. Even when I'm like, I don't even know what to say anymore. There were times where I was just like, I don't even know what to say. Like and it wasn't, well, I guess maybe it was writer's block, but it wasn't normal writer's block. It was just kind of like I just didn't even know what the point of view was or what it is I was trying to express. And I was just going through it. But it was just that, like, that just need to express myself and the love of art. You know, it sounds corny and cliche, but it's true. Just like art is very special, no matter the forum. Like, it's a very special and beautiful thing, and it inspires and encourages people, and it's what I love to do. And so, I don't know, love.
To your point, I think that, yeah, art and the love of it is so important, you know, and it doesn't always get the emphasis that it needs. And especially in a time of crisis, you know, I think that is kind of, you know, to be able to pull that out of, you know, yourself and be able to express it is really necessary.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, that was it. That was it, you know, and just like kind of watching, you know, I don't know. It really did give me a new appreciation for as insane and horrible as it was. It did give me a new appreciation for art. You know, like I said, that's when I reread the Great Gatsby. I read like a separate piece, reading Agatha Christie novels and all of that, you know, looking at art and really get it on some level. I was just searching for something, and, you know, that's where I found it. It was in different pieces of art, and it was just kind of really just kind of affirmed it. And it was just like, yeah, this is it. This is what I love to do. And this is like and not only me, but it just keeps people going, and music and all of it. It's all part of like encouraging. It's there for you in your lowest moment. Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, kind of, what are maybe some goals that you have set for yourself in the next like 3 to 5 years, or even 10 years from now, which seems so long from now, but sure, we'll speed on.
I know, right? Yeah. Right. For the follow-up episode. In the next 3 to 5 years, you got to put it out there and say it. I'm going to have my own show on the air. And I actually have a new writing partner. His name is Preston. He has the same last name as me, Preston Walker. We have the same initials. It's very strange, but he's an incredible, talented writer, and I'm really excited about the stuff that we're doing together. And I'm excited, and I'm confident that one of these is going to get on the air, and like, then we'll be able to just kind of entertain people, and just make a really cool, dope show. I guess 10 years long-term goal, I would really love to start an entertainment co-op, to be perfectly honest, and just have something that is kind of like a studio, but where everyone profit shares on down to production assistants, right? And like my theory my theory is that if everyone profit shares, they will work harder because they want to make more money. Because the more successful it is, the more money they will make. But just doing it in that way, I mean, it can be very top down. It can be the entertainment industry can be very top down, and I feel like there are some really cool stories that can be told collaboratively as a group.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I myself am actually looking to, be more creative and help more of the community as well. This podcast, my photography and everything else. So, no, I love that concept of being able to, pile the money up, right? But then really ensuring that everyone's getting their due diligence and their part of the pie, if you will. So, yeah.
Right. Getting money for the hard work they put in. People work so hard and they deserve it. Yes, we get paid, but like a salary, but you should, I just feel at least you should receive the benefits of your labor ostensibly. Right. And like, when you work hard, if this is, the grip is important too, right? The gaffer is important too. If they weren't for them, we wouldn't be able, like all of the fancy creatives like myself, we wouldn't be able to do all of this stuff. Like you need people who can do shit, who can do physical things.
Yes, exactly.
And they work hard. So.
Yeah, absolutely. They're the ones that make the lights and everything look so pretty and the scene come to life. So yeah. This is a fun and funky question. What would you say to your future self 15 years from now? Whether that's advice or something of encouragement or congratulations or however you want to phrase it.
What would I say to my future self?
15 years from now.
Don't get so caught up in what has come that you don't keep looking forward. Remember the sort of spirit you had in your youth.
Very wise. I like that. Yeah, I think, don't get caught up in it. It's definitely easy to do, but easier, or maybe it's easier said than done.
It's easier to do it the bad way, to do it the wrong way, right? Yes. To get caught up in it.
Yes. Awesome. And then just a couple more questions here. So I always ask kind of, do you have a phrase or motto that you kind of live by and go to like constantly?
And this was the thing I was going to say, and I'll say it now, which is, I always say, and this is a lesson I learned when I was in my mid-20s, as a comedy writer, it's, fuck it made me laugh. And that's the truth. If you're not making yourself laugh, how are you going to make other people laugh? So no matter what you do, and that goes for, I think that goes for anything. I think that extrapolates out, which is just like, you should enjoy what you're doing, because if you enjoy what you're doing, if you are passionate about what you're doing, then that will communicate to the audience. Like if you're being like crassly cynical about like, oh, this is I'm checking all of the boxes, and then people are gonna say, yeah, that guy's just checking all the boxes. So I'd rather be a writer who is passionate and enjoys what he does. So that's mine. Is fuck it made me laugh.
Love it. And then
I get in trouble for that sometimes, but
yeah, I'm sure not everyone agrees, but that's okay. Agree to disagree. Well, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you did mention that you're not on social media. You kind of purged it. So if people want to follow the work,
I'm on Instagram. I will say that.
Oh, you are? Okay. Where can people follow you on, and what's your Instagram handle?
Walker Wire. I don't put that much up, but I am on Instagram. Walker Wire. WALKERWIRE. It's Phil Walker. And then I guess my belief is I like to let my work speak for itself. And so if you want, I guess some of the shows I wrote on, Legends in Chamberlain Heights. That one was batshit crazy. It was my first ever episode. It's like in it a white guy who's like who would always refer to himself as black. He decides to take the plunge, become a black person, goes into a tanning bed, and he comes out like light skin with straight hair, and everyone loves him. And then it's a cartoon, and he gets it turned up on him, and he has dark skin and curly hair, and everyone hates him. So like that was a wild first episode to ever do. That one's batshit insane. a lot of my stuff is actually family-friendly entertainment for now. So just roll with it. I wrote some episodes of that. Monster High, I'd say check that out. I just finished up on a show called Big City Greens, which that's an enjoyable show on Disney Channel. My episode hasn't come out yet, but I would encourage people to watch that one. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, I guess. And when you hear about me, when you see Phil Walker, think like, oh, that's the guy who wouldn't shut up on Alan's podcast. And maybe check out some of the other things I have to say.
Hysterical. Thank you so much. I'm actually curious. I'm going to go back here because I normally wrap it up, but I didn't get to ask you this, and I should have. How did you get into like quote unquote children's entertainment in the sense of like Nickelodeon and all these shows? Because I know you said you are a comedy writer, but I'm curious like specifically how. And
an adult comedy writer too.
Right.
Well, and it's funny too because like I've never written a children's script that I haven't gotten paid for. Like those are just not like the scripts that I write. And I'm always kind of like, I'm always like, why the hell did you hire me? Like, did you read my material? Because my stuff is even kind of edgy for adults, and it's not in like a sort of like swearing or sexual way. It's just like, I don't know, I write fairly subversive material. And I'm just like, okay. But to answer your question, they interviewed me for a show and I got the job, and I went to the interview and I got the job. And then, like I said, you get one and then they keep giving them to you. And so then they're like, oh, do you want to be on, do you want to write for this show? You go, yeah, sure. Why not? And you're like, oh, yeah. But it was cool though. What is cool about it is it really gave me an appreciation for writing material for kids, because like, it really reminded me of when I was a kid, and the shows, like, it gave me an opportunity to go introspectively and think about all the shows that encouraged me when I was a kid and be like, yeah, now I'm doing that. It's like kind of a nice passing the torch sort of thing. I think you get more like shine from writing for adults, but like, I think that like in the long term, that will probably be the most reward. I went to, Comic-Con LA, and I went to like a panel from like the 90s X-Men cartoon. And like now you had all of these like 30-year-old millennials telling like the showrunners and like the voice actors like how much it meant to them, and I think that that's really important. Like I think that those things mean a lot. And but I know too, like someday it's gonna be some like it'll be actually even post Zoomers. It'll be like some fucking Gen Alpha, like 30-year-old. They'll be talking about like, oh, and that episode of Monster High, and that was so great. What were you thinking when you did that? And I'll be like, I was thinking, they're not paying me enough for this. I'm thinking.
Exactly.
I'll be thinking, thank God. Did they send the check?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. How much was that episode? Oh, that's right. It wasn't much, kids. But listen here, it was. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Yes.
Right. I'm glad you had a good time.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm glad your childhood was affected by that. Thank you. Oh, that's so good.
Right. Because you see them do that, right? You see them do that in the interviews, and they like you see, and you're like, oh, it meant so much to me. They're just gonna go on, and then the person's like, yeah, no, we did this, and like this was kind of a thing we were dealing with, and then the studio said this, and so we did that. It's truly just a job.
Exactly. Yeah. But fans will never know that. It's all about them and loving what they're watching. So
exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate all your time and all your stories and sharing everything. And I look forward to seeing what your company creates and everything. So I'll put
I appreciate that.
As I always say, putting all the links in the show notes so everyone can check it out and connect with you as well.
Thank you. And before I go, what's your catchphrase? What's yours though?
That's how dare you flip? No, I'm kidding. That's amazing. What's my motto catchphrase? I don't really have one, and it's funny because even reading my own questions, I realized that actually my catchphrase is I always say dead all the time, and now people like make fun of me for it. But like,
yeah, that's definitely your catchphrase. Dead is definitely your catchphrase.
It's become a thing. So yes, I'm like, oh my God, I'm dead. But yeah, I don't really have a motto or phrase that I go by. But I should probably look into that. Yeah. But thank you so much. I appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Never ask a question you're not willing to answer.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. Yes, that's what it is. You said it better. Yes. I'm a good words person. Yes.
I put words together for a living. It's great. I love it.
Words.
Thank you so much for watching and listening to this week's episode of the Creative Lotus Podcast. And a huge thank you to Phil Walker for all of his time and the incredible stories. This week's Buddhist quote of the week is, each of us must seek to discover the particular theme or motif that will characterize our life. An attitude of intense, undaunted seriousness toward each fleeting moment can open up a whole new life for us, by Daisaku Ikeda. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please go ahead and give us a 5-star review. It really does help out. If you're watching here on YouTube, a big thumbs up will definitely benefit this channel, and I appreciate it. If you want to go ahead and subscribe and check out this video right here, it's a full episode of the Creative Lotus Podcast on YouTube. And until the next one, I say bye-bye and have a wonderful day. What is up, Creative Lotus family? Thank you so much for supporting the Creative Lotus Podcast. Go ahead and follow us on social media. On Facebook, we're at the Creative Lotus Podcast. Here on YouTube, maybe you're watching, we're at the Creative Lotus Podcast as well. And on Instagram, we're at the Creative Lotus Pod. And my personal handle is at Alan Zaki. We say thank you once again. Go ahead and subscribe, listen, write a review. And until the next episode, we'll see you there. Have a wonderful day and stay safe. Bye-bye.